All right. I'm just kind of waiting to make sure that this thing is live here. All right. Looks like we're live. Hey, everybody. Sean here. My goodness, has it been a long time since I've done a live stream? I guess I can go ahead and pop up on camera. I'm just kind of waiting to make sure everyone's in here. Can the chat hear me all right? Presto, here I am. But yes, what's up? Hey, Godzilla 93. Long time, Tevya. Somebody else there too. So many different people in the chat today. It's fantastic. It has been quite a long time since I've done any, as I hit my microphone, any sort of live stream in any sort of capacity. But yes, you saw the title of the video, you saw the thumbnail, but this here is a video titled The End of the DCEU. Hey, Justin Riley, good to see you. But yeah, so I haven't done a live stream in a while. And I figured now was a good time. I'm sure a lot of people can tell that I am a big DC comic books fan. I mean, I've lost count of how many videos I've talked about DC and their movies and shows and all that. I don't think I've done videos on every single film of the DC extended universe. I know I did a video review of Man of Steel back in the day, and then I've done some after the movies. I think from Aquaman onward. But I don't think I covered literally. I don't think I've ever done like a full video on Batman vs Superman or Wonder Woman or the 2017 Justice League thing. But yeah, so I figured now it was like a fun time to just kind of go back and reminisce, if you will, about the good old DC extended universe, a franchise, a series that's been rather divisive from the start all the way up till now. I mean, it is a fascinating thing to talk about. My day is going okay, Tevya. By the way, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, the parents, and that. I hope everyone has a good day. Good weekend. I think it's like a 3-day weekend for a lot of people, although I do have to go into work myself tomorrow. But I do have next Friday off, so that should be cool. But yeah, so my day is going okay, Tevya. How was yours? Happy Father's Day. That's right. Happy Father's Day to all the dads. Godzilla 93. I did post one thing about was it Godzilla on my page, if you will. So yeah, happy Father's Day, and yeah, so that's good. But anyway, so yeah, like I said, so the DC extended universe has been a rather fascinating thing. I remember the hype when Man of Steel was coming out. I mean, I own Man of Steel like multiple times. Like I have like this huge like Superman tin right here that's for Man of Steel, and it's got the movies on like Blu-ray and 3D and all that other stuff. So it's kind of a cool little thing. I got this little gift right here. But I guess for what we could do is I could go through and just kind of talk about it from Man of Steel all the way up to the Flash, because I don't know what's going on with Blue Beetle and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Those are kind of the last two films of like this previous regime, and then really like I think Creature Commandos and Superman Legacy are the real true start of whatever this new universe is going to be. I honestly don't know what they're going to do going forward, because the ending of the Flash kind of leaves it a bit ambiguous. And the Flash, I was looking at the box office this time, and it's not looking too good about with the Flash, even with the return of Michael Keaton, if you will. But yeah, so like I said, even with the return of Michael Keaton, it just didn't seem like it was going to grip audiences the way I figured it might have. But then again, a lot of older audience members probably don't even they see the title The Flash and like they don't really know Keaton's in the movie or something like that. I don't exactly know. But yeah, so like I said, it's been a rather interesting journey, but it is time, I think, to start fresh and new, because the DC extended universe has been a rather fascinating beast from the beginning till now. So much behind the scenes drama. The studio has changed like 3 or 4 times since it began, because initially it was just Warner Brothers. It was post Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy, so there was a lot of hype going into it, and I didn't realize how divisive it was until a little bit of time after Man of Steel came out, because like it did pretty well box office wise, especially for a Superman movie. Because given before that we had Superman Returns, which I'm not a big fan of Superman Returns. I mean, Brandon Routh is like a fine Superman. Like he really got to like get a bit of redemption in the CW Crisis special, so he can play a good Superman. It just was a really really boring movie, just so boring. And then Man of Steel was like, finally, yeah, Superman's punching things. And yeah, I get the division about it, but I overall still like Man of Steel. I have some problems with it for sure, and like some issues that are rather glaring with it. in particular all the stuff with the Kents. But it is a rather fascinating series. So I guess, like I said, I got the whole series here. We can go through and talk about it. And we do not mention the director for Superman Returns. That's right. Or it's Lex Luthor, which, boy, I do have a video on Man of Steel there, and I'm like, oh yeah, so and so was pretty entertaining in the movie as Lex Luthor, and then you realize who it is nowadays, like ooh. But yes, so like I said, I got the whole DCEU here. We can kind of go movie by movie, discuss it, talk about the craziness of the series, and just kind of like any questions or anything like that going forward. So I hope everyone's strapped in. But yeah, what a fascinating series. It started back 2013 with Man of Steel, and then we go from there. We go to Batman v Superman, which one of the most divisive films of all time, a film that kind of broke things, if you will. How are you? I'm doing pretty good. Like I said, it's a nice day out. It feels good to be doing a live stream because I haven't done one in a while. I just haven't had really a topic that I was really interested in kind of discussing for a bit, but this one came up and I thought it kind of works. So I'll get back into the swing of things in terms of these live streams because it's been so there. Maybe perhaps later on, Tevya. I do kind of want to like burn through these things, then maybe I'll jump on in a bit because I did invite somebody else who was like already beforehand, and there was kind of maybe, so I don't want to add too many people to the stream, but I will let you know. BVS was lame. Yeah, I mean, there's Batman vs Superman, man. It's just a rather interesting thing, but yeah, the DC extended universe and kind of like we'll go through kind of the history. Let me pop up I'll pop up the Wikipedia page and we can kind of go step by step through it all and all the stuff that's going on with it. And my God, the development of this universe. And just, I want a movie. You know what would make a really interesting movie is the making of and behind the scenes drama when it comes to the shared universe, because it is fascinating. All the crazy drama and regime changes and all this stuff. It really was 2016 that kind of broke comic book movies in general. So, but we'll start out kind of positive. We'll go like one movie at a time, if you will. So we'll start all the way at the very beginning with Zack Snyder's and Christopher Nolan's Man of Steel. So yeah, like this is coming off post the Dark Knight trilogy, which was enormously successful. But I still really like Man of Steel overall. There's a lot of stuff I think that's really good about it. There's things that I think aren't done so well. Like I said, the stuff with the Kent family is the worst part of the movie, especially John Kent saying, maybe you should have let them die, or that whole awful tornado scene. But things it does get right. General Zod, all the stuff with Krypton, Jor-El. And yes, Tevya, the universe is made from corporate to catch up to Marvel without any buildup. Yes, that is true. Then BVS happened. Yes, Batman vs Superman. I'll never forget that time. But yeah, so it had Henry Cavill, who I think is pretty solid overall as Superman. It's just the only issue is they don't really allow him to showcase much of his charisma. And I know some people will hate me for this, but in the 2017 version of Justice League, he at least got to showcase the charisma. It just kind of sucks that he had the worst CGI mustache face. My God. When we get to Justice League, it'll be kind of fun to talk about the insanity of it. But yeah, Man of Steel got a lot of solid stuff in it. I think it really could have just used one more draft with the screenplay, up the charisma a bit, like let Cavill be a little bit more charismatic, fix the stuff with the Kent family, because I think that really kind of hurts it a little bit. I didn't really have issues with the whole Superman killing Zod thing at the end of the movie, because like I said, even in Superman movies I liked beforehand, like Superman 2, he does kind of something similar and just kind of smiles about it, which was a bit off-putting at times too. Should Superman kill? I don't think necessarily, but it didn't really bother me too much in this movie because we never really established that with him. But yeah, so like I said, there's pros and cons, but there was something to kind of build off of. But yeah, I can see why a lot of Superman fans may not like it, having read a lot of Superman and like just kind of like looking at the movie 10 years later, which it's weird to think about that Man of Steel is like 10 years old right now. I understand they want to do like this grounded, kind of gritty take. And at the time, I remember going to the midnight showing and seeing those big, huge Kryptonian action sequences. But yeah, like that was so insane. Like it's the best live action Dragon Ball Z movie is Man of Steel. I still think, I know the issues with the property damage and all things people have with that, but those fight scenes are so good in Man of Steel that I don't feel like Zack Snyder could even top it in subsequent movies. Like you go to the finale of Man of Steel and you look at the finale of Batman vs Superman, it is such a downgrade, and it's just like, it just feels so underwhelming. When I watch Superman versus Zod, I think that's just it's a really awesome fight scene. Like I said, they're doing the crazy stuff. And again, I get the property damage, but I think I was just so blue-balled by Superman Returns, the lack of any sort of like entertaining action sequences and just the same boring Lex Luthor land plot that we've already gotten before and some of the other stuff that I really wanted to see Superman kind of punch something. But yeah, those fight scenes were really awesome. Even like detractors to the movie can be like, okay, this is kind of cool. Yeah, maybe some iffy CGI, which does carry over to other movies, but Man of Steel I still like overall. I think General Zod, played by Michael Shannon, was a really good performance. Michael Shannon is just so entertaining and so over the top in that movie. He is like my favorite part of it, without a doubt. And then Fiora was kind of cool. And then Russell Crowe was really good as Jor-El as well. So like the stuff with Clark and his Kryptonian stuff, I really liked. It's the stuff with the Kents that I have issues with. I think they're a little too cynical. Definitely not the best take on the Kents. Amy Adams, she's better in Man of Steel than she is in the other movies going forward. She's more proactive with the plot, but I expected a little bit more from her performance. The fight in Smallville, really cool. Fight scenes were really awesome. Yes, Michael Shannon as Zod is fantastic. I will find him when he just kind of screams that. Like he's such a great villain. It's basically just Vegeta and Goku at the end of the movie, and I just love the shit out of that final fight scene. Yeah, I get people's issues with it, but it's really just it's an entertaining movie. So yeah, Michael Shannon, great. Some Hans Zimmer score. It's different from the John Williams thing, but I really like the score in it too. So there's a lot I really like in Man of Steel. I have some issues with it for sure, and I think with one more draft, and they could have, if they would have just tweaked a few things, fixed some things, Man of Steel would just be like right up there with like the greatest comic book movies of all time. It's almost there. It just needs a little bit of work. I'd keep everything with Zod. I'd keep all the Kryptonian stuff, keep the action bits. Maybe you can throw in a bit where Superman's just like concerned for the civilians. Again, it's like day one. He's fighting an entire Kryptonian army. I'm going to cut him a little bit of slack because it's just kind of crazy. But yes, I still like Man of Steel. I think it's the best DCEU film that Zack Snyder made. But yes, so going on from Man of Steel, we move into the next thing. And yes, Superman flying for the first time is quite beautiful. Going on to the next movie, we have Batman versus Superman v Superman Dawn of Justice. When this thing was announced, the hype for this thing was insane. Because Man of Steel, like I said, had its detractors, but it wasn't really just like end all be all. It was a success at the box office. We were ready for Superman to kind of come in, and I was like, okay, we got a foundation there. Superman did kill Zod. Let's kind of go into the consequences of that. And now we have the setup for Lex Luthor and all that. And I'm like, there's a lot you could have built off of with Man of Steel. And then the studio comes in, and like I said, Man of Steel was a success, but it wasn't like $1 billion success, but still really successful nevertheless, to the point where they greenlit a sequel. And then we finally were announced we're going to bring Batman into this thing. And then they had the big Comic-Con announcement, and everyone was just excited and freaking out. It was like, yeah, finally, like one of the best Comic-Con announcements of all time is Batman and Superman. Because for years, people have been wanting Batman and Superman to share the screen together. And we just never got that. For whatever reason, it's like, well, we didn't include this here. We didn't include that there. But, you know, the MCU's been doing their thing. DC kind of wanted to wait for Nolan to finish his thing. And in hindsight, I really respect the Dark Knight trilogy for being just that, a trilogy, a true beginning, middle, and end. Something that most movies just generally don't do. And like I said, I admire it more now than I have in years past, simply for the fact that it's the only real superhero story that truly ends. And I respect that. But going after Man of Steel, it's like, okay, who's going to be Batman? And then we were wondering, since Nolan was involved in Man of Steel, who's going to be the Batman and Batman vs. Superman? The logo was different, so it was the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns thing. And then we were just wondering, is it World's Finest? What is this thing going to be? And then it was eventually announced who the new Batman was going to be, and it was Ben Affleck. And Ben Affleck's casting was met with a lot of like outcry online. It's the same thing that happens every time a Batman's cast. Pattinson had the same thing, but usually when a Batman like has a lot of backlash with the casting, then you come in and they turn out to give a really good performance. And I really liked Ben Affleck's Batman and the stuff that he was in there. So what was this comment here? It's badly a Batman. I can't remember the last time I walked out of the theater. So disappointed. I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, there you go. It has its positives, though. But yes, so anyway, Batman vs. Superman is coming out. They announced the casting of Ben Affleck. I was like, okay, we'll wait and see. Ben's a talented filmmaker. Because Ben Affleck was coming off like Argo and Best Picture stuff. So, and you know what? In the film, Ben Affleck is really good. I actually would have liked just kind of a solo Batman movie focused on Ben Affleck. I know he wrote like a script, which I hear is really good, but then all the drama Justice League, which we'll get to shortly, really kind of hindered things. So yes, they announced Batman vs Superman, and then they titled it Dawn of Justice, but it's not Batman vs Superman, it's Batman v Superman. I'm like, is this a court case or something? I don't know. Like, just the V, and it felt a little kind of pretentious a little bit. But then again, afterwards, then we got more castings coming in. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Never really heard of her. I'd seen her in Fast and Furious. We're like, Wonder Woman's in this thing too? Well, that's cool and all, but you're starting to kind of overcrowd things. And they're like, oh, then Jason Momoa's Aquaman. And then Ezra Miller is the Flash, which we'll get to later. And then Ray Fisher is Cyborg. Like, what is going on with this movie? Why is there so many things kind of be packed in? And then the casting that really kind of made me concerned, which was warranted when I actually saw the film, was Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. As soon as I saw that, I legitimately started laughing. So like, oh no, 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 no. And again, when I saw the film, I did not like that performance at all. I just feel like it was a really big miscasting for Lex. At first, I was like when all this casting was coming around, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it a chance, going to give it a chance, going to give it a chance, going to give it a chance. And yeah, it just, there's a lot kind of going. There's just a little too much going on in this film. Tonally, it's got some issues, but there are some positives for sure. And I'll get into those in a second. So, Batman vs Superman, all the stuff. Then the trailers start coming out. It looks pretty epic and grand. But okay, like you have all these different things going on, and then Jesse Eisenberg, you see the look at him with his ridiculous orange hair, which is like one of the worst wigs I've ever seen, and just the design. He's like, oh boys, and he's shoving Jolly Ranchers in people's mouths. I could not stand his version of Lex Luthor. But like I said, Ben Affleck was still really good Batman. The Batman stuff in the movie has some really good stuff. Batman is killing once again, which I know a lot of people have had issues with, and understandably so. Look, my favorite Batman movie is Batman 1989. It's my favorite comic book movie all time. Michael Keaton's Batman kills in those things. I understand the issues, and I know, like, complaining about it and furthering, people are like, well, you like that one, Sean. Well, how do you justify that then and not justify this now? Well, the difference is compared to like where it's doing it now as opposed to doing it then. Doing it then, there was no template for these movies, and like I said, it was a different time back then. And obviously, people know Batman's no kill rule. I think now there's less of an excuse because, well, you should learn from your mistakes, right? Like, as much as I love Batman 89 and I love Batman Returns, Michael Keaton's Batman definitely kills a lot of people in those movies. Again, great movies, love them to death. Even was working on a little video discussing 89, but now you have the opportunity to have learned from past mistakes, and that's something you could have built off of, and you really could have set apart a bit of a difference between Batman and Superman. So instead of kind of that, they kind of just made Batman darker and even darker than this take on Superman, because I think one of the issues I have is like Batman and Superman in this film. Like, the Batman stuff is cool, but the Superman stuff, it gets kind of rough when it gets to the Superman stuff, because Henry Cavill is just, unfortunately, this movie just like hinders all his charisma. Like, he's a very charismatic guy, and you got to see some of that in Man of Steel. He was more likable, like him and Amy Adams. Like, I wasn't a huge Amy Adams Lois Lane fan in Man of Steel, but here everything just kind of gets worse, and it's just kind of muddled down because you got this stuff with Batman, you got this thing here, you're setting up the Justice League, you got too much stuff going on. But I'll say some positives. The first 10 minutes of the movie, really, really good. And again, like I said, the theatrical cut comes out, and we'll talk about how like the things started to kind of go wrong for the DCU with its second movie. So, like I said, the first 10 minutes of the movie, really, really solid. Al Pacino's Commissioner Gordon, that could have been rather interesting. So, I think he could pull it off if he like actually shows up to act. I agree, Jesse was not a good Lex. We'll get in the ultimate cut. It is an improvement over the theatrical. Like, honestly, like once I saw the ultimate cut, I never really go back to watch the theatrical cut really again. Okay. Blue Beetle and Superman. Yeah, because like Blue Beetle comes out like before Aquaman 2. It's kind of weird. But anyway, so where was I going to? But yeah, so I'll talk about some positives in Batman vs. Superman. The opening 10 minutes is really, really good. You have they once again do the Wayne parent death stuff, but the way Snyder stylistically shoots things, like comic panels kind of come to life, the shot of the pearls and all that other stuff, I thought it looked like spectacular on film. And then the opening sequence where they put Batman into the whole like General Zod event from Man of Steel, I actually like that. So it's taking a lot of the criticism they had from the previous film and turning it into a plot point and kind of building off that. So actually using like things that people had issues with, the collateral damage, if you will, to showcase why Batman hates Superman. And the opening 10 minutes to save those people, like I said, that was good. You get him saving people. And then all you needed to know to like set up why Batman hates Superman is that look he gives when like the ruins of Wayne Tower, when he was looking up and he sees the damage and that caused. That's it. That's all you really needed. And like that was enough for me. As for Superman hating Batman's because he's vigilante and Clark Kent's kind of like has interest in all this stuff, then the plot starts to get a little bit convoluted and kind of all over the place, like some tonal issues. Superman's really mopey this entire movie. Like there's no joy on his face when he's saving people. And I feel like that's something that you should kind of get with Superman. And I guess they're trying to build to become the classic Superman. But like it's kind of like movies have gone on. Like, I mean, like there should be a little like even Henry Cavill kind of want to bring out that more joyful elements of Superman, but then they kind of rush things. They rush Death of Superman. The whole like the whole fight, and of course everyone's favorite scene, the Martha elements. It just didn't quite work. I think had Batman not crossed the line and like he was going around kind of killing people and he was about to for the first time, and then he's reminded of it a little bit more, it could have been worked in a little bit better. So the Batman stuff, a lot of it's pretty cool. The warehouse fight scene is the best Batman action sequence of all time. That scene is awesome. It's like something straight out of Arkham or the Arkham video games. That scene is great. And then just kind of afterwards, like Wonder Woman comes in, her entrance is kind of cool. I like the interplay she has with Batman. I think they had good chemistry on screen together. Amy Adams and Henry Cavill, unfortunately, this time around have like no chemistry in this movie, like whatsoever. Then we get to the death of Superman, and it just did not work for me. It just felt kind of rushed because then he comes back right away in the next movie. I feel like if you really want me to feel more for Death of Superman, you should have like spent more time with this take on Superman to really kind of make me feel that death because you already have the Justice League movie announced, and we know Superman's good. It's just an excuse to kind of get him out of the way so Batman can recruit the Justice League. I think that's still kind of dumb. You don't really need that. The Justice League has formed when Batman and Superman are both alive at the same time, long before all that stuff. So I don't know why they went in this direction. They wanted to have like this redemption arc for a Batman who's kind of unhinged, and there's some mystery and intrigue there, like the whole like Robin suit and that in the Batcave. I thought that was cool. Jeremy Irons is really solid as Alfred Pennyworth. Like I said, the stuff Ben Affleck's really good in the movie. Then they're also setting up stuff with Darkseid and all that other stuff. Like Barry Allen kind of shows up at one point. They have the Justice League cameos, which are just on a web drive, and they literally like built the logos. I thought that was kind of like unintentionally funny. So yeah, there's like it's the need to kind of like overdo so much when you didn't necessarily need to. So, but yeah, so 2016 we got DC Rebirth, which gave us that. Yeah, so like I said, 2016 was a rather interesting year because this is really what started to break DC. So Man of Steel is a bit divisive, but people still showed up opening weekend for Batman vs Superman. There was some hype for it, and then the reviews started coming in, and it was not all that great. And then the word of mouth happened. And I think Batman vs Superman had like the biggest drop off ever, a second weekend for a comic book film because it opened huge. It was like Easter weekend. I was really excited to see the thing. And then when I saw the film, I left the theater. I'm like, this isn't as bad as I think a lot of people are saying. And like watching the movie, like more recently, it's been like a year. When did I last watch it? Maybe last year or like the year before. I think the movie overall is just kind of all right. But for a movie that's the first cinematic appearance of Batman and Superman on screen together, it should have been a lot better. And like I said, it definitely has its moments. They're pretty good. Did not really like a lot of the stuff they did with Lex Luthor, especially Henry Cavill. They didn't do him any real favors this time around because, like I said, this dude could be really. I didn't really feel the distinct difference between Batman and Superman. No, a good World's Finest thing was the animated DC animated universe when they told that story, and like it was the crossing over of Batman the animated series and Superman the animated series. Like that was really well done. And like I said, you had an established Lex Luthor, you had an established Joker. The storyline came together interesting. You had Bruce flirting with Lois, which was pretty funny, setting Clark a little bit on edge. You had the distinct difference between the two characters, and they played off each other so well. But yeah, then like the divisiveness happened with Batman vs Superman. Of course, the theatrical cut isn't as good as the Ultimate Edition, which some people think fixes all the mistakes. I don't think it fixes everything. There's still a lot of issues, especially just the way they kind of handled Clark Kent. You still have Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, but it is an improvement over the theatrical cut. But yeah, like it was just kind of the need from the studio to kind of set so much stuff up and kind of catch up to Marvel and all that when they really didn't need to. You could have just done Batman and Superman in one movie. That's enough. You didn't really need to have Wonder Woman Doomsday looked bad. The final fight is not that great. There's a few moments that are kind of cool, like when Wonder Woman jumps in, but comparing the final battle in Batman vs Superman to Man of Steel, it's just not as good. It's a step down in terms of quality. And like there's some things it does fix. Like I think BVS is shot kind of nicer in a lot of ways. I think Man of Steel had a little bit too much shaky cam, like hand camera action. But 2016 was the year of like, yeah, so it was a very interesting year for superhero movies. It was the year of like superheroes fighting each other. We had Batman versus Superman, we had Punisher versus Daredevil, we had Civil War, where it's pretty much like kind of the same plot of as Batman versus Superman, where you have like a mysterious villain from the shadows just forces two teams into conflict with a lot of kind of like iffy plot conveniences that kind of happen in both movies. And then you also had like Justice League versus Teen Titans. So like heroes were fighting each other like all over the place in 2016. It was a very divisive year in general, like in other things, like a lot of other fighting outside of just movies. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. But yeah, 2016 was kind of the year where it's kind of broke away things. Yeah. Instead of Parasite, I have not actually watched Parasite, so I couldn't really answer that question. I like the Joker movie. I don't think it's like the best movie of the year, but I still enjoyed it. Yeah, like I said, Death of Superman. As soon as Doomsday, which they ruined in the trailers, by the way. Why throw that in the trailers? The way they did and just bring in Doomsday like that. I thought that was kind of dumb. Um, but yeah, it was just like it was something that kind of like frustrated me a little bit. Like we did not need Doomsday in this movie. The way they kind of brought him in. Yeah, Civil War was better executed. I do have problems with Captain America Civil War. And like I said, somewhere like BVS, I think the humor kind of like undercuts a lot of the serious situations. And sometimes it doesn't feel like they wanted to showcase lasting stakes. Like the whole like the movie really should have ended with Cap throwing down the shield. I would just cut the credits right there. Would have been more effective and kind of led more into the next film a little bit better. I never read Civil War 2 in the comics, tell you. But yeah, so Batman vs Superman, the Doomsday stuff didn't like it. Just felt like, okay, we got the Trinity together, which this is where the issues started to come to play. And like a lot of people were very critical of Batman vs Superman. I know the fan base, there's people who really likes BVS, and that's fine. I just think it should have been executed a lot better, and it just kind of left me like it's one of those. It was kind of one of the hardest times to be a DC fan because I really wanted to love Batman versus Superman. I really want to love this movie. I believe me, it's Batman and Superman together. Why wouldn't I want to love it? It's like two like the most iconic super. Well, technically three since we got like Wonder Woman there. We had the DC Trinity for the first time, and it should have been a better movie than what we got. Don't hate it. I think the movie overall is all right. It has its moments, but it's not as good as it could have been, unfortunately. Yes, humor does work in comic book movies, just the way it's kind of executed. I just think for some moments it's like, you didn't really need it. Just depends on the tone of the movie. Like sometimes it's like you could use a little bit levity. Like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, I feel like the humor works really perfectly, just kind of the way that works into those films. But yes, so Batman vs Superman, it had a huge drop off. That's where the division really began. You had fans who were just outraged, people didn't like the movie, and then you had like general audiences who weren't too huge a fan of it. Because like a lot of people like I know like given the Snyder cuts come out now, and there's kind of this whole like box office with it. Issues like, oh, look at how it was like under Snyder's leadership, and then look at where it is now. But yeah, so Batman vs Superman came out. It was very divisive. People were not too happy with the end result of it. It still made money. It made almost $900 million. But I know there's the whole argument where it's the first time Batman and Superman are on screen together. You got Wonder Woman thrown in there. This movie really should have cracked $1 billion, and it had a huge enough opening where it should have. But the problem was the movie didn't have very good legs at the box office. People want to show up because it's Batman versus Superman, something that people have been wanting for like since the first introduction of these characters. We wanted to see these characters come together. We've been wanting it for years, and then it's cool that they finally did it. But I think that movie really put a damper on DC in general with the general audience. And like I said, it has its fans, and I understand that, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Like I don't hate it. I don't think it's like the worst thing in existence. I think the movie is all right. It has its moments, but I just think it could have been executed a lot better. I think Man of Steel is a superior film to Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. But yeah, so after that, DC was in kind of a bad spot, and then this is where the issues started to come in with Justice League and the filming of that. Because instead of like waiting a little bit to see the reception of Batman vs Superman, they'd already like went all in on like Zack Snyder's vision initially. Like, okay, Zach, we're gonna let you do all this other stuff, and then they're like, whoa, wait a minute, let's go in, let's wind the clocks back a little bit. You can direct this under more supervision. They had to kind of like change the tone because like Batman vs Superman was filming, or Justice League was filming like the same month that BVS came out. They really should have just waited a little bit, but that's just the way it is. But we'll get to Justice League in a second because afterwards comes, in my opinion, the worst film in the DC extended universe, and that is the Suicide Squad here. Now, I am aware David Ayer apparently has his own cut of the movie somewhere. I don't know if it's any good, but as of right now, this is one I genuinely dislike. I like the first 20 minutes. I like some of the cast, but this is one I just don't like as a movie. So yeah, Suicide Squad was next up. And like I said, there is still enough hype around the DC universe because, like I said, this is the first time we're getting Joker and Harley Quinn. This is the first Joker after Heath Ledger. And in hindsight, it's really funny because Jared Leto was just an awful Joker. Like, he's unintentionally funny, but like Suicide Squad, I guess the original tone, they changed it because like, oh shoot, people didn't like this really kind of like dark, somber tone of Batman vs Superman. Like, quickly went to change things around to showcase, hey, look, Suicide Squad it's totally different. Then they had the trailers that came out for this movie, and I tell you what, Suicide Squad, whether you like the movie or not, the trailers are some of the best I've ever seen. Like, they had Bohemian Rhapsody, they had like Ballroom Blitz and all that. This looked like a really fun time at the movies. And when it came out in August, it had a huge opening, and it still like did very well at the box office. It's just the movie is not very good. In fact, it's pretty bad. It's one of those movies that's kind of hard for me to watch. Like, I really wanted to love Suicide Squad, but this thing unfortunately was hampered by really bad reviews. You have Margot Robbie as Harley, which is good. Will Smith's character as a Deadshot. Viola Davis as Amanda Waller is pitch perfect casting. I will say that, though. I think she is probably the best actor in the movie. Then you have Enchantress and her belly dancing. And then you have like the worst villain of all, which is that other CGI villain that they have to fight. So yeah, Suicide Squad, great trailer. Jai Courtney surprisingly does a good job. Like, I mean, that's the first time I've ever said that about a Jai Courtney performance, where he was probably the funniest part of the movie is Boomerang. But this version of Suicide Squad that I got, this or the extended, definitely had this is where the studio meddling really kind of started at DC, because they try to like make the movie funnier, and the jokes kind of worked in trailers, but then when you kind of watch them in the movie, it just feels really weird and out of place. And then Jared Leto as the Joker. Oh my God. I was looking forward to his performance because I'm like, okay, like this guy's gonna go all meta and it's gonna be like he's won like best actor or something, supporting actor or something. Like, let's see what Jared Leto has to bring to the table as the Joker. And again, this is the first Joker following in the steps of Heath Ledger, who, rest in peace, created one of the most iconic villain performances of all time, arguably the most iconic comic book villain performance of all time. This is Katana. She's got my back. Yeah, like just really like dumb lines like that. Yeah. So my God, that was stupid. Yeah, the whole Katana like there's like the cast is charismatic enough to try and carry it like through this like muddled, ugly directed movie. The first 20 minutes isn't half bad. Then once the mission starts, is really where the movie falls apart. Like Jared Leto is just so bad. It's like like his stupid laugh. Some of it was unintentionally funny, but like what a terrible performance of the Joker. Granted, we haven't seen like the full like David Ayer cut of the movie, but every bit I see like more behind the scenes stuff of him, I just like, oh God, he is quite bad. Margot was really great as Harley Quinn, and she would of course play the role in multiple movies afterwards. But like I said, Suicide Squad, while it was a success at the box office, once again was wait. Sounds like a capping. Yeah, pretty much. I'm making Enchantress Zone. Why have the story about the squad? Yeah, exactly. Which I think the Suicide Squad fixed, but that movie didn't do very well at the box office. And that's a much better movie too. So yeah, like I said, we had Jared Leto's Joker. This is where the studio meddling really started to happen. They had the people edit the trailers, edit the movie, and it worked financially. But the bad word of mouth and people like not so fond of what DC was doing was really putting a damper on the universe. And this also didn't help the fact that also Marvel at the same time put out Civil War, which was a much better reviewed, well-liked movie. And again, this was all going to Justice League, which was coming up pretty fast. But on top of that, we also had Wonder Woman coming out. Now, Wonder Woman was the home run that DC desperately needed the following year. Because like I said, there was a lot of hesitancy with the movie. It didn't open quite as huge as the other films, but Wonder Woman had strong legs at the box office, and it's a really, really good movie. If you find a battle with Ares at the end, but Wonder Woman is a really solid comic book film. The story is interesting. The chemistry that Gal has with Chris Pine is really excellent. The heroic moments hit. Having it set in World War One, it's dark and gritty enough, but there's still actual color kind of added to the movies. Wonder Woman is a fantastic comic book film. I think as of right now, it's my second favorite in the DC extended universe. I think this movie's great. The final battle is a little bit iffy at times, and that kind of reeks maybe of reshoots, or they needed kind of the big video game fight at the end with Ares and all that. But I think the first Wonder Woman film works really, really well. And it had a lot riding against it because it had to come out in like the DC reputation was not the best at the box office beforehand. So this movie kind of came out at the right time. Wonder Woman had an excellent solo film debut. There was like kind of moments that were more akin to Christopher Reeve's Superman. It worked really well within the context of this universe. Like all they really needed that connected to BVS was just the photo at the beginning of it. But Wonder Woman is a fantastic movie. There's an interesting arc going on here, and pretty good. Plus, we got color finally on tired ugly muted colors. Yes, the ugly muted colors I think kind of got old. Wonder Woman was an amazing movie. Yes, like I said, the first Wonder Woman really, really solid all around. It had a really good box office run. It is a triumph. It was the much needed victory that DC desperately needed at the time, because coming off of like three rather divisive and like one at least not very well liked film, they needed a win. And then Wonder Woman came in for the much needed save back in summer of June 2017. And I really like Wonder Woman. Like I said, it's my second favorite DC Extended Universe film. The villains, like I said, could have been a bit stronger, but like as it's saying, like I said, Gal and Chris had really good chemistry on screen. In terms of superhero relationships, I really think it was one of the strongest I've seen on screen. And then they have kind of the more tender, like human moments with the other like kind of members of like Diana's like crew and that. Like he had her training and all that. And this movie knew how to like direct Gal, and then you had like a nice blend of kind of the more heart that DC was kind of missing in some of its films, if you will, like kind of the more lighter. Like, I mean, it had some dark, serious moments for sure, but like then you had kind of like even some like the Snyder-esque action sequences, like all of it kind of combined and worked really well together in it. Yes, I do see. And then Wonder Woman 84 happened. Man, it kind of sucks that Wonder Woman 84 happened the way it did, because we were all like high on Patty Jenkins at the time, and then we get Wonder Woman 84, which I think is kind of like, I enjoyed it enough, but it's like watching in hindsight, like, yeah, it's rather not the best. I would also for Wonder because it did her character. Justin have her hopey, charismatic was, yes, like I said, that was good. It was a much needed, hopeful superhero film. So there we go. Wonder Woman. I don't really have too many negative things to say about it. I think it's really good. Bonus scene not seen in theaters, which should have been included because it sets up Justice League. So yes, Wonder Woman, big roaring success. And then we get to the film that really kind of just put the nail in the coffin, if you will, in some ways, for the DC Extended Universe. And that is the 2017 theatrical cut of Justice League. Now, where do we begin with this one? So back in after Batman vs. Superman came out, shortly afterwards, they were going right into production and filming Justice League. And they filmed pretty much the whole thing. But unfortunately, during this time period, Zack Snyder's daughter had unfortunately passed away. And they have like that. That's a really horrible thing that has to happen to any parent, to lose their kid that way. So then he was like, but you also have to factor in the studio was really on their case. And like after losing your kid like that, a movie just seems like, look, I really want to make this movie, but I got to be a family man. And I respect the hell out of him for kind of doing that, where he had to kind of step away. Now, a lot of people say he was kind of forced out. And it kind of seems like he was already kind of being forced out of the movie and kind of his own cut of it. But that's where the studio meddling and mandating kind of came in. And it just, a lot of stuff was going wrong. Like a lot of stuff at first we were like, okay, so he's gone. Who's going to come and finish the movie? Keep in mind, this is like post the Avengers. They bring in Joss Whedon, which none of us knew at the time how much of a dick Whedon was. Because like I said, you didn't really hear this stuff on the Avengers stuff. And now like post Justice League, like once all the NDAs started falling out, then you started to hear the real kind of crazy stuff. So Justice League comes out. And by the way, not the best movie, but I love this steelbook. This is an excellent steelbook cover, and it's just kind of a shame that the movie is just not the best. Now, I do have fond memories the first time I saw this movie because it was the first time I ever went to a press screening of a film. I made friends there. We kind of laughed. We had a good time. And then like trying to watch it again, it's really, really, really tough. So yeah, Justice League was coming out because they had it like they were trying so hardly to kind of rectify Batman vs Superman because Batman vs Superman was not a very well liked movie. And so like, okay, we're bringing Joss Whedon. A lot of people are like, oh, this is a very hopeful thing. He did really well with the Avengers. So naturally, he's going to do great for this thing. And then he had to go in, do a bunch of reshoots, like that were supposedly Zack Snyder approved, which now we know are generally not. And then instead of pushing the movie back a year, the studio executives wanted to keep their bonuses. So they're like, just shove it out in November. And the CGI, and then because given all the reshoots, we had the whole thing with Henry Cavill and like his situation where like he was filming Mission Impossible. He already filmed the movie, so he goes off to film Mission Impossible 6, which much better movie than Justice League. But he had the mustache. So they're doing all these reshoots and they had to CGI out his mustache because contractually he couldn't shave himself. And so, like I said, instead of delaying the movie because the director had passed away, the studio executives didn't want to lose those sweet bonuses and they forever damaged DC as a whole. They have not recovered fully post Justice League. I mean, there was kind of like little blips here and there, but fucking up Justice League the way they kind of did really put a damper on things. Like Batman vs Superman was one thing, but then Justice League came out, it underperformed massively. I think it may have made some money, but it's a Frankenstein movie, and you can tell that right from the get go. As soon as Henry Cavill comes out with his really bad CGI mustache, it just like the CGI face just. I mean, like I said, this is Henry Cavill. This is like a GQ-esque model dude right here, and just the way they kind of fuck up his face really badly, really puts a damper on it. I will say this though, in terms of pros, Henry Cavill's performance as Superman in that movie is actually quite good because he's actually allowed to be a lot more charismatic and charming, and like it kind of leaned into his arc. You actually felt a difference when he kind of came back a little bit. As opposed to like where it was before. But you also have things like studio mandates, needing this movie to be 2 hours long, and all sorts of other shenanigans going on behind the scenes. And you have like it's still people like screaming and yelling about all the stuff that went on. Now I don't know all the details about what fully went on. I just know Joss Whedon was apparently a major dick to everybody. Then you also had the studio mandating this thing be 2 hours. Now keep in mind, we know Zack Snyder's Justice League is 4 hours long. And then the movie is released as it is. They're totally trying to like change things up, and he didn't have the time. The effects look really bad. Then you have Steppenwolf, who's just a terrible villain in general. Legit, one of the worst comic book villains I've ever seen is Steppenwolf in this cut of Justice League. Now, they did improve upon that a little bit in the Snyder cut, but Steppenwolf was just not a great villain. And then once the movie was done, it came out. It was another blow to DC fans because like they just had a big success with Wonder Woman, and you think that momentum would kind of carry over into the next movie, but Justice League, it's a disappointment. Like you have the cast in there, and like I said, there's a lighter tone with this cut of the movie. They try and add some humor. There's a few good scenes, like the scene where Bruce talks about how Clark is more human than he is. Like I actually kind of like the lasso of truth scene with Aquaman, but the movie looks ugly. Like it is a hideous, like Frankenstein's monster of a film with really bad VFX. Like the Whedon humor is very noticeably different from the Snyder stuff. But the only thing pro I will say is like Henry Cavill's performance, I think is actually, I know this may seem blasphemous, but I actually kind of liked his more charismatic performance in this one than I did in the Snyder cut. At least there felt like a difference when he kind of came back. Like it was nice to have Superman kind of be a little bit more upbeat and like kind of joyful after kind of how he was in Batman v Superman. It just sucks that he had the awful CGI mustache, and they just kind of like ruined the whole thing with him. Like the way he kind of came back, like the black suit thing they have in the Snyder cut makes no sense. Because if you know what the black suit's supposed to be, it's like a rejuvenation suit. But here they kind of like threw that away. But like I don't know, we'll get to the Snyder cut in a bit. But yeah, so Justice League came out, it really kind of fucked things up badly. So it was kind of the trifecta of like Suicide Squad, Batman vs Superman, and Justice League. They really put a damper on DC and their movies for general audiences. Now it's kind of funny because ironically after this, the highest grossing film DC Comics movie of all time would come out, but it was mostly, you know, having to do with international box office. But so yeah, Justice League came out. They had this whole big arc plan. They cut so much off the movie. They changed things, and it's a Frankenstein movie that we get now. There's a few elements that are okay in it, but it's not a movie I really like to go back and watch. I do have fond memories the first time I saw it, and I had fun. with the crowd I went with, because like you're with comic book fans, and I made friends that I'm still with to this day, so I have fond memories of that screening. But yeah, so like outside of Henry Cavill's like more charismatic performance, like Batman just made into a bitch in this thing, and like you could tell Ben Affleck is just not happy to be there with most of these reshoots. It's an ugly looking movie. It's a Frankenstein movie. It didn't quite work out. A lot of behind the scenes drama, and just that ultimately led to people campaigning. Like once they started to find out, like, hey, is there another version of this movie out there? Which in a way kind of created a monster of its own, and we'll get into in a second. But yeah, Cyborg, they messed up badly. Henry Cavill wanted to be a more heroic and hopeful Superman, and like I said, you got to showcase like how much more charismatic he was as Superman, and I actually kind of liked that. But we never really got to see him do another Superman movie with that amount of charisma. So that's one positive I can give this cut of the movie over the other cut. It was like Henry Cavill was a lot more charismatic and charming. It just sucks that he had the bad CGI lip the way he did. So yes, this movie came out underperformed. Maybe it made profit with video on demand and all that other stuff, but for the Just League to come together, it just became a disaster. A lot of people hate this one more than Batman vs Superman, and I can understand that. I don't think it's as good as that one. Yeah, it's tonally like it just by the end of this thing, you're just kind of left scratching your head like, why was this thing done the way it was? Why didn't the studio just wait? Had they just waited and just kind of let Zach finish this single movie as is, as opposed to maybe not necessarily greenlighting the next movie afterwards, but like a movie that's not butchered like entirely. Like I wonder where the state of DC and that would be right now. Because like I said, after this they went Aquaman, and it's just like they just try to distance themselves from Justice League. This is the film that this one fucking movie. I wish it never existed. If we never got this, where Zack Snyder Justice League, where would DC Comics be as a whole right now? Because this is the Justice League, and it just it just sucks that they were given a film that's just not deserving of the name. Like this one and Suicide Squad are definitely, without question, the worst in this universe. Like I said, it makes everyone a joke. There's really like no good Batman like scenes in there. Like even like the fight scene with Superman in that, like it just Batman just made it into like a bit of a bitch. It just kind of sucks that you had this one, like as you said right here, one shot and you screw this thing up. It really kind of. I haven't read all the comics. I've seen bits of them though. I have no idea. We'll have to kind of wait and see. But I think Superman will actually do quite well. But again, I like that's going to be kind of a reboot of this whole like shenanigans and all that. But yeah, so Just League came out, and that kind of like that's kind of like the nail in the coffin. That's kind of when DC was like, well, looks like we're going to have to like change things up for good. And then a lot of the creative team was booted out. Then that's where the campaigning for this Snyder cut of it began, and it kind of created a monster in its own. Now, this is going to be, I'm going to say two things. Look, I don't really have issues with Zack Snyder as a filmmaker. He's made some movies I really liked. Like Watchmen is my favorite movie that he's ever done. I think that movie is excellent. And then, 300 is kind of goofy fun. Dawn of the Dead's okay. And I like Man of Steel. But what Justice League created is kind of one of the most obsessed fan bases I've ever seen. Now, not to say everybody, because there's two types of like Zack Snyder fans. There's Zack Snyder fans, and then there's like Zack Snyder cultists, which a lot of people have kind of dubbed the fan base that like are kind of the insane, like obsessed fans, which I've never seen any other director in history have. It kind of created a monster in its own right, just simply for not releasing that. Because then it kind of like once the Snyder Cut finally came into fruition, it kind of get like some people just refused to let it go, like because like he had his own plans in that, and then it created kind of like a really kind of chaotic fan base as a result of that. And then it just makes like interacting with yeah, like I said, it is an absolutely insane fan base, and it makes like that refuses to move on, and it just like miserable all the time, especially if you're on Twitter. Like it just gets absolutely awful every single. Like look at the stuff with the Flash movie right now. Like it just like it's. I don't know. It's like they're at war with the studio, and yeah, the studio kind of sucks a lot. I mean, I know, like I said, Warner Brothers has been changed like 3 times. Then AT&T comes in, then they bring in like this guy named Walter Hamada, and then it's just a mess. So Zack Snyder's going to adapt material if he does his own stuff. Then his flaws, yeah, I would agree with that. Like I said, Watchmen, pretty faithful adaptation. They do change the ending, which I think works for the movie. But yeah, like I said, but I'm actually excited for Zach to go off and do his own original stuff right now. with Rebel Moon and that. I'm like, good, go ahead, create some original IPs in that. Do like have your full creative control, and just do your own thing with it. So, well, besides Star Wars, yeah, Star Wars is a mess too. I agree. Got to let it go. But yeah, like I said, it created like one of the most insane things. Like it wasn't too bad at first, because we're like, okay, we want to see this original cut of Justice League. Darkseid was apparently in it. Like Darkseid is one of my favorite DC villains. Eventually, we did get that version released like 4 years later, 4 or 5. Yeah, was it 2021? Yeah, 4 years later. But yeah, like I said, it created like one of the most insufferable fan bases of all time. And like I said, there's two distinct types of fans. I'm not referring to Zack Snyder fans in general. Like people just like his movies and are generally pretty chill. And just like if somebody doesn't like him, they're like, okay, cool, moving on. They just like his movies. But then there's the cultists who spend every waking moment just obsessing over these movies, crying and complaining that they don't get them. Like that's or like when it's a memorial post for somebody, they make it about Zack Snyder. Just make everything about this one guy. And like I said, like I'm kind of bummed he never actually says anything about it. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, they'll even argue with him. Like, even if he seems kind of positive to somebody, like they'll get really mad at somebody else over it. Just, it's created like one of the most insane fan bases I've ever seen. I'm glad he's focusing on his own original IP stuff. Like, do you really want this guy to kind of go back to this studio that didn't really like a lot of his vision? Like, they liked a lot of the stuff when it made money, but then like his other stuff was divisive. Like, do you really want the guy to kind of come back to all that? Yeah, I remember that they were trying to review bomb Godzilla versus Kong, because they felt like it was like a threat to Zack Snyder's like stuff. Like that's the level of insanity that some of the fans within his fan base went, and just refusing to let it go is just like a whole other thing. It's just like it made not being like it makes being a DC fan not as much fun, right? Because it's just the self obsession with one guy's vision. I have never seen it for any other director in history. Like Nolan has his fans, but like this is just a new level of like insanity, with like one singular fan base, and it's just it takes the fun out of it. And not like I said, as I said before, I'm not saying everybody that's a fan of him is like that. I'm just talking about the really crazy ones, like the really hardcore crazy ones. And if you've ever been on social media and like been on Twitter and like seen anything when it comes to like DC and their movies, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, like I've had to deal with a few, and I just audibly groan. It's like, oh my god, just shut up, move on already with your lives. I always think back to that William Shatner thing. It's like, get a life. um, but yeah, it's ridiculous in general. But anyways, going back to other DC stuff. So now they're kind of left in a weird position. Justice League kind of bombed. Let's be honest, it did. And so now people are wondering, like, well, Aquaman is already like filming. Like, otherwise they probably would have just scrapped and rebooted back then. But like, okay, we might as well release Aquaman. And then surprisingly enough, Aquaman comes out domestically. It doesn't have the biggest opening, but it has more legs. And then it ends up becoming the highest grossing DC Comics movie of all time, which is insane to think about because, like I said, this movie had a lot riding against it. But then you have James Wan brought in, and visually, this is like one of the best looking comic book movies I've ever seen. It's not my favorite of all time. It's got some problems, like there's some bad acting at times, especially from young Arthur, who's like, "Are you saying they executed her because she had me?" Yeah, this is the only DC Extended Universe film to make $1 billion. So, yeah, it's it's like it's crazy. Like I guess like how much money did that cut of the movie make though? Did it make a lot? Because like there's no like raw data. Like I can get like stuff from the numbers in terms of Blu-ray sales, but since it's on a stream, like how successful was it? Because I heard the budget like when they got to it was like $70 million on top of the already budget of Justice League. Like, is it like are they in like the green? Like I don't exactly know. So yeah, but yeah, Aquaman made $1 billion, which is an absolute shocker. How much money this? How did this thing become the highest grossing DC Comics movie of all time? It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen Ben Affleck's solo Batman movie to see what he wanted to bring in Deathstroke and all that. They had the setup there, but he had such a miserable time during the Justice League reshoots that it kind of broke him, and then he went back to the drinking and all that. I think he's doing okay now, but you can kind of see the effect that filming Justice League it broke everybody involved. Like it was not a good filming time for especially the reshoot stuff with Justice League. That's right. I remember that. Like Aquaman came out. It's a goofy. It's kind of goofy. It's an entertaining movie. I think it's one of the better films in this universe. You have Patrick Wilson as Zorn because he's James Wan's go-to guy. Willem Dafoe as Volko. Some intense, amazing action sequences in it. Some definitely like unintentionally funny bits. Jason Momoa's charisma is what carries this film. Then, of course, you have Amber Heard as Mira, and I'm just going to leave that at that because, like, I don't want to get into the stuff with her and Johnny Depp and all that, like, all that crazy stuff. She's going to be in the next movie, so we'll see how that turns out. I don't know how well Aquaman 2 is going to do. Then you have Black Manta in there. Like I said, the costumes look great on screen. Visually, Atlantis looks stunning. It's definitely got its faults for sure, but visually, like from like a standpoint of that, this felt like a big, grand, epic DC film. There's an interesting hero's journey enough. It has issues with some of its scripting, but like it's a fun popcorn film. It's like I said, it looks great. There's some fantastic action sequences. Momoa is extremely charismatic and carries the whole thing quite well. And plus the whole underwater superhero aspect, it worked out so well in this thing, and it looked really great on screen. So I enjoyed the Aquaman movie. Not one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, but it is an entertaining one. I'm running out of breath here. So then we get into our next thing. Again, this is kind of like where the new regime starts to take over, and they're like, okay, do we do kind of standalone things? Do we really focus on the shared universe aspect of it? Okay, yeah. That's true. We wouldn't have had Matt Reeves' Batman. So yeah, it's kind of weird. Like DC's failures sometimes lead to their biggest successes, or like for example, like when Batman and Robin came out, that thing bombed. They never made Batman triumphant, which then led into the Dark Knight trilogy, which then like led to the Dark Knight and all that. So like there's usually like if they have a big failure, it's followed up by a really big success, and I think that history may repeat itself. Yeah, like I said, Aquaman's a silly movie, but it is kind of fun and entertaining. The costume looked amazing. Higher ups, like I said, Warner Brothers, like their shakeups, their executive like craziness. I want a movie about the making of the DC extended universe, like all the behind the scenes drama and all that stuff, like put together, or a documentary about it all, because it is batshit insane. All the crazy stuff that has happened in the making of this movie. Yeah, if it even makes half of what the first one did, that's still a lot of money. But I don't know anymore. I haven't heard very good things about the test screenings for Aquaman 2, but maybe it'll make money overseas. I don't know anymore. DC's brand is really damaged right now. Yeah, like I said, the costume looks great. So, anyways, Aquaman, big, huge success. So it's like they're kind of screwed right now because they can't quite reboot despite the failings of Justice League. So it's like, where do you go? Like, what direction do you kind of go in with DC and their movies? And like I said, I think they brought in Jeff Johns at one time, and I've heard a lot of bad stuff with him in terms of the movies and all that. Yeah, documentary on the DC. I would love a full-blown documentary, all the dirty secrets like come to light, and all this stuff with it. But like, meanwhile, like I said, Aquaman does well. Fans are still campaigning for the Snyder cut of Justice League all this time. And then the follow-up film, like I said, it wasn't too bad. And then it started kind of like the fandom and all that started to get kind of worse and worse as things went on. But then after Aquaman, which was a success, like, you know, it was critically successful enough. Financially, it was huge. But then DC was still kind of looking for like, what's the thing that's like really critically well praised and like successful enough? The next film in the DC Extended Universe is my personal favorite of them all. And that is the first Shazam movie. Like, this one is fantastic. This is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Yes, it doesn't have the big bombastic action of things like Aquaman and that. It's a smaller, more personal story. It's an interesting premise. Like, you have the whole kid, and it's got elements of big. The humor is there. It's heartfelt. Like, it's emotional too. Asher Angel and is really good in this thing as the young Billy Batson, who just kind of like a little bit cynical because like he lost his mom when he was younger and he's trying to find her. And then the final and then the sequence where he confronts his mom is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in this entire universe, where he finds out his mom actually like abandoned him. Like all these years he's kind of looking for her, and then it's like this like where true family is not always blood related. I really like the first Shazam. Like I said, very funny. It feels like, as somebody I've heard once say, it feels like the lost 80s kids film. I think the first Shazam is really, really good. It's definitely better than the sequel, which I still have a soft spot for, but this first one is really, really good. Been talking for almost an hour straight right now. My voice is starting to go away. But yeah, the first Shazam is really good. Mark Strong is an interesting villain. You have John Glover in there too at times. David F. Sandberg. I really like David F. Sandberg as a director. Like, if you ever get the chance, watch his stuff on YouTube about like the making of things, and like just if you're interested in filmmaking, I think David F. Sandberg is a fascinating person to kind of watch. He still does his YouTube short films. He gives you a lot of behind the scenes information on movies and like how things are kind of done in that. But yeah, so post Aquaman and Shazam, like, you know, Shazam was a much lower budgeted film. Being a success, like it felt like DC was kind of getting a better direction. They didn't quite have like, now they're kind of focusing more on standalone stuff. Not so much really building to anything big and bombastic. They're kind of just like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Now, granted, that same year we also got Todd Phillips' Joker, which made $1 billion, which is insane to think about because no R-rated movie in history had ever made $1 billion, and Joker was a huge phenomenon. Like it took the world by storm, and nothing had ever really been done like that film in terms of like a comic book medium to take off like that, especially for an R-rated film. So now we're in like this weird phase where DC is like, okay, we got some shared universe stuff. Now we're going to be doing Elseworld stuff at the same time. Yeah, I would agree. Much better. And like I said, Marvel is still like also at this time, like they're getting Endgame and Infinity War and all that. And like Shazam was kind of sandwiched between all this stuff, like Captain Marvel. And despite being Captain Marvel, Shazam was kind of sandwiched in between that stuff. And it still did well enough. Like it's a smaller family movie, but the family stuff is great. Like I love how like warm and welcoming the adoptive family is for Billy Batson. I just really love Shazam. Like I think it's a fantastic movie. And again, much better than Marvel's Captain Marvel movie, which was just really terrible. Yeah, like I said, DC really should have done like this whole character, like smaller build up, like with the character focus. Like I know it's like Marvel did their thing, and you don't necessarily have to copy Marvel, but you really could have just taken your time with it, really build a strong foundation. Like it's been a rocky foundation from the start. It's been kind of all over the place. So then after Shazam comes the next film in the DC Extended Universe, and that is none other than Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. This one's a rather kind of interesting movie because it kind of stands alone. It's the first R-rated film in this universe, which did distinguish them a bit from Marvel because, you know, they did the R-rated thing. The first Suicide Squad was a big hit at the box office, and Harley Quinn was still popular. So it's kind of left wondering, like, where the hell is this thing going to go? And as it stands, Birds of Prey is an all right movie. Like, it has its moments. Like, I think I enjoyed it overall. Ewan McGregor as Black Mask was such an entertaining piece of shit villain. I loved him in this movie. Like, he is my favorite part of the movie by far. Like, some other things don't work. Not all the humor works, and like some of the action sequences are kind of lacking in some instances. But it definitely feels quite different. And I think it probably would have made more because I know like right after this we had like the pandemic hit and all that stuff. But yeah, like this one's kind of like a strange little beast in and of itself. It's got some moments I like. Like I said, Ewan McGregor is my favorite part of this movie by far, but then it butchers things really badly. Like Cassandra Cain in this movie is the worst like adaptation I think I've ever seen of a character. It's not Cassandra Cain at all. You shouldn't have even called her Cassandra Cain. Like you have like one of the best fighters in the DC universe. Like, and now she's kind of this street smart kid and all that other stuff. It really did not work at all. And I guess there may have been some studio meddling with this one because of course there is, but this one definitely felt like it had a vision. It didn't quite work as well out as they would have hoped. I think it made its money back at the box office, but they just really butchered Cassandra Cain. And like I said, what they did with her is pretty unforgivable. I might watch that Gremlin series. That's right, at the same time. Yep. I am sad they butchered Cassandra Cain Batgirl. Why are the titles so long? Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, Harley Quinn is not a member of the Birds. Like, they should have just called this thing Harley Quinn. Like, they call it Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. They've called it, like, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. Like, this movie's had, like, so many titles. It's been, like, all over the place. It's kind of ridiculous at this point. But, yeah, like I said, like, why call this thing Birds of Prey when there's no Barbara Gordon in there who's, like, one of the main factors of it? So I don't know. Like DC was in kind of a weird place. This is like another one of those movies they just kind of made and just threw at a wall. Like, okay, Margot, we really love you. So here you go. Go ahead and do your thing. And then, of course, once again, like shortly after this movie hit, then we had the COVID pandemic thing that hit. Yep. Butcher Cassandra Cain. I think I'm actually gonna give the Superman show a watch. Like I wasn't like too enthusiastic. Like I saw like the opening credits. I'm like, my God, this actually like looks kind of like I really love the opening. It felt like some sort of anime opening. I'm like, maybe I'll give this thing a watch and see how it turns out. Like I said, I actually like Lois's design. I think it's like the whole like pixie cut. I think looks kind of adorable, and like just like her and Clark look adorable on it. So I think I might give it a shot. Yeah, exactly. Why have Cassandra Cain? Why not do just an original character? You don't have to call Cassandra Cain. Like, how do I expect this character to become Batgirl? I think the butcherizing of Cassandra Cain is really bad. Like I said, Ewan McGregor is my favorite part of this movie by far. He really should have just been the DCEU Joker. Like if you had this version, like this character here, like this take on Black Mask wasn't quite a comic accurate take as the Joker in the DCEU with that would have been great. Well, I mean, Affleck did come back for the Flash. Yeah, like Flash and some reshoots for Zack Snyder's Justice League. And he also was in Suicide Squad. But yeah, he was only in it for like a short time. Yeah, that could have been fun, Tevye. Yeah, Ewan McGregor, he is so entertaining. He's like a 1980s piece of shit villain. Like the type of villains you don't really see in movies anymore. But like, he is by far my favorite part of the movie. Yeah, like I said, it looks kind of fun. Yeah, like I said, Clark can be a bit of a dork. I kind of like that aspect of him, but like he's so lovable and wholesome. So I like that. So yeah, Birds of Prey. Been a minute since I watched that one, but yeah, so that one came out, did okay. I think it may have like just barely broken even, but it was like the first DCEU movie to really not do very well at the box office. Like that's where the signs of it started to kind of slow down. But also after this, coming up was Wonder Woman 1984. And by goodness, this one is not a very well liked movie. It's kind of a guilty pleasure for me, like, cause it's like so like over the top insane that I kind of like admire some of it. Like it's not a great movie, but like it's kind of like a so bad it's good at times. But yes, the pandemic hit. This movie, I wonder how it would have done had the pandemic not hit. Because if it came out in theaters, it still probably would have made a lot more money. But there came a point where they're just like, you know what? Fuck it. We'll just put this thing right to HBO Max and make it a nice Christmas gift for everyone. But it just turns out like I was looking forward to it. Like, Patty Jenkins back after the really good first movie. Let's see where the story goes. And oh boy, does the story go in some rather interesting direction. Now, I'll say this. The villain with Pedro Pascal is a lot better than the villain we had in the previous film. Like, I actually liked how like ridiculous and charismatic he was. The way Steve Trevor is brought back and the way she uses him as like that was bad. Like I don't know how anybody looked at the script and was like, you know what, maybe we should change this thing to where he's just brought back. Like, why would I don't understand how he like takes over somebody's body and then Wonder Woman uses him as like his own sex doll. Like that just felt kind of off and really weird. You didn't need to have that aspect. You could have just made him come back to life like as he is. You didn't need him to take like place of somebody. You could have had him just in his World War One get up or whatever. Because like I said, Steve's sacrifice at the end of the first movie I thought was it was emotional. Like I said, it was kind of like a sad, tragic thing. I was interested to see how they brought him back, but the way they brought him back, like it just didn't really work the way it could have. Like they still have really good chemistry on screen. But just the story this time around is not nearly as strong. Cheetah looks kind of bad. The action sequences are a huge step down from the previous film, which is really surprising. They go for this really wacky, goofy tone, and it just doesn't quite work. Like the wishing rock, the monkey's paw thing. Yeah, like I said, just dumb. Like, why do you have to do that? Why does he need to take over somebody else's body? Like it's just dumb. Yeah, it's kind of a gross thing when you think about it. It's like it's dumb. Like you could have just had him like as himself. Would it really made a difference if he's like taking over somebody else's body? Why not just have him there, like in his World War One get up, and then that's it? Yeah, like why? Like you couldn't just give him a body. He could have just emerged out of thin air. Like, what the hell am I doing here? Like he could have just woken up, like John, like Kyle Reese in like the Terminator wakes up in present time. Like he could have been like running around. Like you could have probably had a humorous scene, like, why am I naked or why am I all this other stuff? He's trying to like just walk around. He's just kind of clueless to where he's at. So it was just a lot of stuff. Like you couldn't have just given him his own body. You do that, fixes a lot of problems with this movie. Like, because that's like one thing. The suits look kind of cool. And there's some nice moments where they're kind of like looking at fireworks and all that. But it really just felt like an unnecessary film. Like, what did we really learn from this thing? So it just, like I said, I have not really gone back and watched this thing all that often. It's not the greatest. It's one of the lower DCU things. And it's kind of one of those instances where it's just like, this is where like it starts to kind of fuel like the fire a bit. Like, oh, see, this is what the DCU is like without Zack Snyder. And that's kind of where that like the arguments really started to come into play in that with it. But yeah, so Wonder Woman 1984, definitely a bit of a miss, if you will. Like it's kind of a guilty pleasure. Like the last time I went, like I can kind of laugh at the insanity of it because it's like you're basically just giving Patty Jenkins like, all right, Patty, go nuts, and then. I agree. It's kind of unfortunate the Flash CGI looks as bad as it does because, like I said, I enjoy the movie just fine. All right. So next up, we have the film that people have been fighting for the longest time, Zack Snyder's Justice League. My all 4 hours of it, and you really do feel the 4 hours of this movie. This is like DC's Lord of the Rings, if you will. But honestly, if you cut out all the slow mo, it's probably only like 2 hours long. Just kidding. But yeah, so Zack Snyder Justice League, after years of campaigning, years of all that stuff, the pandemic hits, and then they're like, okay, what do we got to put in this new HBO Max streaming service? So then we finally come into it. The Snyder Cut's finally getting released and all that. So want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. So yes, so Zack Snyder's Justice League was finally announced after all this time. Like, see, when it was announced, I was like excited at the same time because like for a couple of years, like post Justice League, I had to deal with like there was the fan base, like I said, just got kind of worse and worse as it kind of went on. So like I almost like didn't want to see him get like rewarded for it, like and kind of that like even though I was like looking forward to kind of seeing the movie, like if it never happened, I'd be okay. But I still wanted to check it out. It's kind of like the original cut of Godzilla versus Kong, where I still want to see that original version at some point. But we just never like I don't know if we'll ever get it. But yeah, so we finally got the Snyder cut all this time. It is a improvement over the 2017 thing. Now there, like I said, there was a few things I actually kind of liked in the 2017, just a little bit more. Mostly Henry Cavill's more charismatic performance. And the fight when the fight, I think, I don't know. I liked Henry Cavill's more charismatic performance and seeing a little bit more upbeat in the 2017 version as opposed to this one. Because like I said, him coming back in this one, you don't really like. He's still kind of like he doesn't really show off much charisma like he did even in Man of Steel. Like it kind of hinders that. We do get glimpses of Darkseid. I do think him losing in the past sequence makes him look kind of like a bitch. You should have still. I would have kept Steppenwolf in that sequence as opposed to having it just be Darkseid in that regards. But like I said, this is an improvement over the previous thing. It does overstay its welcome a little bit more compared to where it was. Well, it does overstay. It's like 4 hours is a bit much for any movie. Like just trying to sit in this thing from beginning. Like this is a movie I have not been able to sit through like all. I have to like take a break in it because it is 4 hours long. But like this one, like it goes on a bit too long. I think the epilogue wasn't really necessary. It's kind of cool we got a Batman and Joker scene, but it is Jared Leto, so that still kind of like stinks a little bit. There are some iffy effects at times in this thing, but it does look a lot better than the 2017 cut. And like I said, the score is stronger here. And as much as I love Danny Elfman, that score in Justice League was kind of forgettable outside of like the classic like Tim Burton music that kind of plays in from time to time. And you do feel like when Superman's Return does come back, it feels a little bit more earned this time around because we actually got to see Bruce really recruit the Justice League. Kind of took its time. This doesn't feel like a complete movie per se in some ways because they do outright set up a sequel. Like they tease stuff with Darkseid, and we're just kind of never going to get that stuff unless the new DC universe kind of takes cues from that. But I don't exactly know what DC is going to do. But they finally released it. You had Henry Cavill back without the CGI mustache. I just wish he brought his charisma with him that he had in the 2017 cut. Going to do after the movie on Lawrence Arabia? Maybe one day. Yeah, Darkseid looked pretty cool. Darkseid is like my favorite like Justice League villain, and I would like to see more of him down the road. But I think having Darkseid lose in the flashback stuff really kind of hindered him a bit for me. Like it just felt kind of underwhelming. Like it's like he just kind of roars and stuff, then he gets his ass beat. But then again, some people will be like, "Oh, well, his name is Uxas or whatever." I'm like, no, it's still Darkseid in this stuff. But that could have been handled a little bit better. And then he just somehow forgets that all this stuff was on Earth. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, Cyborg's story is a lot better this time around. because there's actually like more of a focus on it. So I like that aspect to it. And then plus like the way the climax kind of comes in with the Flash and the whole Speed Force bit. I like that scene. I thought that was kind of interesting and rather innovative. The heroes are still like, like Wonder Woman's kind of killing people, and they're killing Steppenwolf and all that. Like, yeah, like the scene with Wonder Woman. I'll say this: the 2017 version just has her kind of like take out some bad guys. Here, like she straight up like murders all those people, like just blows up the whole floor when she could have just kind of taken them out like that. But yeah. The dark future scenes, I don't know. Maybe it's just like I kind of grew tired of like the whole Injustice Superman, like because we kind of like for a while, like I kind of wanted like a more upbeat Superman after a while because I felt we kind of had like the dark, depressing, like evil Superman stuff. Like we had the boys going on with Homelander and all that. I just was like kind of tired, like just the whole explanation. Like Injustice is kind of a game I liked, but then now kind of like I'm kind of like going back on terms of like my enjoyment of it at times because it's just kind of like I don't know. I just got like it is what it is. Like yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's true. But like he's like when I say Dark Side lost, some people will be like, well, that's not really Dark Side who really lost. It's so and so. But it's just I don't know. I thought that kind of made him look weak. You shouldn't have had him lose in the first thing. It's basic booking. Um, the flashing, yeah, the flashing was pretty cool, and it was kind of an interesting way to kind of close out the climax. Still wish Cyborg said booyah. Apparently the actor did not, though, from what I heard. The 2017 version did. Yep. So, do you think the future Batman movie should introduce the Bat boat? Yeah, why not? I mean, Batman Forever had it. It was kind of cool. Personally, I was also burned out with Evil Superman. Skip Birds of Prey. I talked about Birds of Prey here a little bit ago. I agree. Evil Superman is annoying at this point. Yeah, so I'm kind of over it. And plus, like, just the whole thing, like Lois Lane is the only key to Superman's humanity. No. Superman loves people in general. What about his mom? Like, there's that too. But yeah, like I said, I just think like the explanation for Superman turning evil is like kind of dumb in some ways. And he's like, because Lois dies, he's susceptible to the anti-life equation or something like that. I don't know. I didn't really care for that much. It would be cool to see the League in that take on Darkseid at some points. I just wish the movie was a little bit stronger. Like I said, I like this version of the movie. I don't love it. I like Man of Steel a lot more. I think it's a little bit more focused in some ways. I think the link of this one just kind of drags the movie down for me. Flash still has, like you said, is kind of annoying at times in here. But like the grand epic moments, you definitely feel it. Like when Superman comes back, he has a really badass intro because like the other version is like, well, I believe in truth, but I'm also a big fan of justice, which did get a big round of applause at my screening. But in this version, he gets hit with the axe. He's like not impressed. He's like, and he just like freeze breaths him. Like, okay, that was pretty badass. You still have like Steppenwolf as the villain, who is just kind of not that great. I don't like the design of the character in this one. I really don't like it in the 2017 version. It is better here, but like what a horrible design. Like it looks nothing like the comic book counterpart, and not in a good way. You could have just had like an actor there on set. Like, wouldn't it have been cool to have like a Gerard Butler Steppenwolf as opposed to like this shit that we got? It just like because like Steppenwolf looks more humanoid, like in the comic book stuff, and like Steppenwolf kind of sucks as a villain. And, like Steppenwolf's such a lackluster character in general compared to other like characters you could have utilized. But instead, we got Steppenwolf. Think about that. All these great Justice League villains we could have had, but we got fucking Steppenwolf as the main villain. Yes, he's just a lackey for Darkseid, but it's just Yeah, we did get Martian Manhunter, but it also leaves me questioning, like, where the fuck were you this whole time, buddy? Like, you did, like, I wish Zach didn't reveal that before the movie came out. It would have been a nice surprise. Like, it was always kind of a cool fan theory. And like I said, it would have been cool to see the actor, like, actually get to play the character in subsequent films. But I'm like, where the fuck were you when the world was ending all these different times? So, yeah, I mean, like I said, there's some good moments in here. It is an improvement over the 2017 version. And you know what? The director's vision got to be seen, and all the years of like people campaigning, it's kind of cool that it did lead to something. But it also, like, afterwards, when they're like, okay, here you go, here's your Snyder cut, we're still gonna move in a different direction. That didn't make the fan base very happy. And ever since then, it's just a nonstop thing. Like there's always moving, like it's like always moving the goalposts. It's like, okay, we're gonna try and do this, we're gonna boycott this, or it's gonna end up like selling it to Netflix, which I think is just ridiculous. Netflix is not gonna buy DC. Watch somebody like take this clip years later. Watch, it finally does happen after I say that, and then somebody will take this clip like out of context years later. It's like, see, haha, you were wrong, Sean. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I think the movie's fine. It's a bit long for me. There's some great moments in there too. I like the stuff with Alfred, of course, like where he's like making tea with Diana. Like there's some nice little moments in there. There is more character for Cyborg, who really got the shaft in the theatrical cut. And then Flash is like the characters all kind of like do something. Um, it's not an amazing movie, but it is an improvement over the 2017 cut. So yeah. So, anyways, after that, we would move on. After that, another filmmaker comes in who would later go on to run DC Films, and that is none other than Mr. James Gunn. And of course, we were still in the pandemic time, so like this movie came out, it didn't do very well in theaters. Like I guess it was like did pretty well on HBO, but James Gunn was brought in after his whole firing from Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a whole crazy fiasco from there. So yeah, like the Suicide Squad came out. Now I'll say this though. The first Suicide Squad had better trailers, but it was a bad movie. This one didn't have very good trailers, but it was actually a really kick-ass movie. I really like the Suicide Squad. I think it's one of the best DC EU films. Like, I mean, it was like up there with like my favorite, like towards the end of it. Because like I said, it's violent, it's R-rated, it's funny. The characters are very charismatic. It's violence. And I think it really works quite well from start to finish. This is like what I feel like a Suicide Squad movie should be more like, because they're doing like Black Ops stuff. There's some questionable stuff. Excellent point. That's what I mean. That's what always kind of bothered me about the reveal. It's kind of cool. Like, where were you during this? Where were you during this? Yeah, like I said, Martian Manhunter was like just kind of lazy. And like even at the end of the movie, he's just like, well, okay then. Yeah, the Suicide Squad is a fantastic movie. Like I said, Idris Elba was really good. This is the best take on Harley we've gotten in this universe, like her design. Even like characters like Rick Flag get a bit of a redemption, where he was kind of forgettable in the first movie. Like he is like one of the best scenes where he like fights off a Peacemaker. Of course, this would also lead to the spin-off Peacemaker TV show. Then you have Ratcatcher 2. You have Starro the Conqueror. Like this one really embraces a lot of its comic book goofiness. Not all the humor works at times. Some of the jokes don't land, but I think this is a really damn good Suicide Squad movie, and a huge. It's like night and day. Like you have the first movie, which is like really bad, and then you have this one that's just really good. But also the title is really dumb though. Why call it the Suicide Squad? Like call it something else, like Suicide Squad 2 or something. But I don't know. Kind of sucks Will Smith didn't come back, but I think Idris Elba is a really solid lead regardless. But yeah, exactly. It's a perfect Suicide Squad movie. It's really damn good. Like this is what a Suicide Squad movie I feel like should be. The characters doing kind of more Black Ops stuff and something a little bit darker, a little bit more grittier. They face off against Starro, which is pretty cool. There's some actual stakes and consequences, I felt like, and plus you get a little bit of Viola Davis in that movie. And then as the movie ends, of course, there was a post-credit scene which sets up the next thing, which was the first DCEU and the only DCEU TV series, Peacemaker. Do you really want to taste it? Now Peacemaker was like a movie, like a show that a lot of people were kind of questioning. So this is once again James Gunn's full like creative vision right here. All right, what's in? Yep. King Shark was great. Yeah. Excuse me 1 second. Gotta rest my voice. I've been talking for like an hour and 20 minutes right now. So yeah, then we got Peacemaker season 1. I guess they're gonna make season 2 eventually, but it's gonna be a lot of years in between this. But Peacemaker was a huge surprise for me. I didn't expect to like Peacemaker as much as I did. In fact, I actually like it more than the Suicide Squad movie itself, because maybe I had more time with Peacemaker. It's funny. That opening sequence is like iconic. And like I said, this is kind of like where James Gunn was kind of being leaned to like I don't think it was officially like, not until like Black Adam was he officially like brought in to kind of take over. But Peacemaker came in very comic booky. There was an interesting story right there, memorable characters. You even get the Justice League kind of comes in rather briefly. Hey Pierce, how you doing? Cinematic Trash, good to see you. But yeah, like Peacemaker was a nice surprise. Honestly, I can't think off the top of my head what it would be. Yeah, Peacemaker, very funny. Not all the jokes work, but like I like the characters. I like Vigilante. Peacemaker was pretty good. Amanda Waller's integrated pretty well into the show. Eagly, of course, is the standout because James Gunn really knows how to make animal characters quite memorable. Let's start with Peacemaker and his dad. Like I said, it's just a funny show. Like it's more kind of like smaller character focused, and which I liked about it. Like wasn't this huge, big, bombastic thing like the Suicide Squad movie was at times. And yeah, not all the jokes work, but I think overall Peacemaker is a really solid show from start to finish, about a kind of like the more fucked up side of the DC universe, because there's some pretty messed up stuff that happens in this movie. But I do think it's worth checking out. Who knows when season 2 will come out? I guess it's supposed to come out after James Gunn finishes Superman. But then again, like, is it in the universe? I don't know. It's kind of all over the place. But yes, that opening sequence is so iconic. I never skipped it. So I really liked it. It's a very stark contrast to a lot of the stuff that like the initially started with Man of Steel in this universe. So I really like Peacemaker season 1. I think it's really great. I have to rewatch it again sometime. It's only a couple episodes, like 8 episodes or something. And then, of course, we have the next film, which is pretty much signaling the end of the DC universe. It's like now, at this point, Warner Brothers is like bought out by like Discovery. We had AT&T who had them, and then things weren't doing well for them. And then the pandemic hit and all that. And then we have Discovery comes in to buy them up. And there's kind of some lingering stuff. The next thing is, of course, Black Adam. Now, Black Adam, like The Rock was out here chanting like the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change. The hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change. And you know what? In a way, he was kind of right. So yeah, The Rock comes in and he's The Rock. The Rock is like what they call franchise Viagra. Like he's supposed to reinvigorate a series. Like he did it for Fast and Furious. He did some things like he helped G.I. Joe get more money or do well. Journey to the Center of the Earth too. So The Rock is kind of that guy. But this is where this was supposed to be like The Rock's next big venture. Like he really wanted to kind of take over DC and all that, and he was hyping it up. He even got Henry Cavill to come back for a little cameo. Now keep in mind, this is the first time Henry Cavill has put on the suit since Justice League 2017, and it was a hype moment. And they're kind of setting things up like, oh yeah, it's gonna be great and all that. And then Henry's cameo kind of went nowhere. And then the new creative team kind of came in and was like hired in as the head of DC Studios, something The Rock was trying to gunning for. But I think Black Adam was kind of the last hurrah for that universe. So if this movie didn't do very well, then that was kind of it. And, Black Adam's not a half bad movie. I do think the problem is that The Rock didn't really want to play ball in some ways. I'm just speculating. Like, Black Adam is a Shazam. Like, Shazam should have been, like, in Black Adam 2. Or Shazam 2 should have been with Black Adam. Like, these two characters, like, and that's, of course, the next film in this universe. Like, these things should have been more interlinked together. Like, Black Adam should have been involved with Shazam. Shazam should have been involved with this. But for whatever reason, I don't think The Rock wanted to do it. Because for whatever reason, he just wanted to fight Superman. Because that's, like, it's not Black Adam versus Superman. It's The Rock versus Superman. But yeah, it didn't quite work. I like the JSA in the movie. Like, Pierce Brosnan is really good as Dr. Fate. Like, the characters are likable in this. The villain sucks. There really isn't much of a villain. There's some funny bits in there. There's some entertaining action sequences. Like, a lot of movie looks kind of great, but it's not a movie that's going to really like hold up, stand the test of time. But it's not all that offensive either as a film. It just kind of comes and goes, if you will. It's kind of an all right film. Like, it's entertaining, like at times, but it's not like a masterpiece. The score is really good. For Black Adam, and that you get some pretty badass sequences, but it doesn't quite like fully hit the mark. I think the way that they were kind of hoping for, the way I think it should have. So, but yeah, like I said, Black Adam is a Shazam Captain Marvel villain, and the fact that we don't really get to see that, and the fact that this movie didn't, like, this was kind of like the last hurrah for that old DC universe. Like, The Rock was trying, and like I said, I'm a Rock fan. I go back to pro wrestling and all that quite a bit. Black Adam's kind of fun at times. Not the greatest thing I've seen, but you get some good moments in there. And I like the dynamic between Black Adam and Hawkman. I thought that was quite interesting. And the JSA, they were pretty good too. And Pierce Brosnan is just kind of cool as Dr. Fate. It's just that, like, the movie didn't quite. And plus the tease at the end with Henry Cavill coming back, I was looking forward to it because, like, I wanted to see Cavill play Superman again, because I feel like he never really got the chance to really fully shine the way he should have. Like, this is a very charismatic dude, and he loves Superman, and he wants to do it, but Black Adam didn't make as much money as it did, and that was kind of like the big hurrah for DC. Had Black Adam like actually done like some banger business, then who knows what would happen next? Maybe James Gunn wouldn't be taking over DC the way he did, because like this was kind of like him leveraging all his chips into one basket, and it didn't quite succeed for them. And then of course we got the announcement of the reboot of it all, if you will, where James Gunn's like, okay, here's the last movies coming in. The new DCU is going to start with Superman Legacy, Creature Commandos, and all that other stuff. And then we kind of had some lingering films that were kind of doomed really after that announcement. So the first one up was Shazam! Fury of the Gods, a sequel to my favorite film in the DC Extended Universe. And Shazam 2, I'm one of those people who actually like Shazam 2. It's not as focused. It's not as good as the first film overall, but it is quite funny and it is entertaining. Villains are kind of weak. You probably could have just merged them into one. To be honest, you didn't really need to get that. Um, oh yeah, like I said, and then Henry Cavill just did not get the chance to shine. Um, yeah, like I said, I'm with people who like Shazam: Fury of the Gods, but it's like the first. I think it's the first true like bomb in terms of like. I mean, some movies like maybe broke even in that. Shazam: Fury of the Gods did not do well at the box office at all, and it's kind of it sucks. But it just kind of is what it is. And there's a lot I liked in Shazam too. Maybe they just kind of waited too long. Maybe it's the reboot. Maybe it's a bunch of factors where people just started really losing interest in DC. Because even Marvel is starting to hit that fatigue too, in a lot of ways too. Like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania did not break even. Maybe it'll break even on Blu-ray and that down the line. Do well on streaming or something. But we're kind of seeing this trend where a lot of the stuff is just kind of flopping. The Flash is going to be a box office, but unless it has unless it performs a miracle and has really good legs at the box office, it is not going to do well overall. And we'll see how it goes. But I dark days are ahead for the Flash. Like that's kind of just the end of that right there. But yeah, yep. Well, The Witcher, I heard Henry was like the only person who cared about the source material on that show, and like he just wanted to make it like faithful, but the writers did not. So he's like, all right, whatever, I'm done. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it just didn't work overall. Like, I mean, they call it the Snyder. Like, that's the thing. It's kind of like there's this weird divide within it. It's part of the same universe, but then like they call it like the Snyderverse is only called like there's only some things some fans consider canon to the Snyderverse, and that's just like Zack Snyder's movies, and then maybe the first Wonder Woman, and maybe David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad. Everything else is just considered inferior to some of the people within that fan base. It doesn't really count and all that, but it's kind of all in the same. It's kind of where like really Justice League is the one that kind of breaks it all. Yep, Guardians of the Galaxy, like that one didn't open as huge as the other ones, but it has strong word of mouth, and I think that's what's kind of carrying it to do well at the box office. Because the Marvel brand's kind of been faltering a bit too, because they've had a lot of lackluster stuff too. And I actually think the Marvels is not going to do very well at the box office. I'd be surprised right now because a lot of people are just like, because the first movie was positioned well because you had it was the big end credit tease with Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War, like my favorite MCU film. So it's like, oh, we got to check out this other movie. It's kind of like and it didn't really have any factor in the plot whatsoever. Had that movie come out like when it did, or like a year or two, like after, if that movie came out like after like Endgame or something like that, or like even before Infinity War, wouldn't have been as good. Yep. Yep, the Flash is flippity floppity. And then of course you have I don't know, like the Snyderverse. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, so yeah, Shazam Fury of the Gods. I mean, I have a video on it out there somewhere. It's not like the best, but it's not like the worst. Like I enjoyed the movie fine. It's entertaining, but it is what it is. So it kind of sucks that Shazam, like a sequel to my favorite DCU film, didn't do as well. But I guess general audiences are just stop caring about these movies for the most part. Like some movies do well and then others don't. But and like I said, the first Shazam was good, and so I'm just like shocked that this one did as bad as it did. And then of course that leads us to kind of the ending of this whole journey, if you will, the Flash, which is pretty much the last hurrah for the DC extended universe. If you count, excuse me one second. So like because Blue Beetle, I guess it's going to kind of be its own thing, maybe incorporating the new thing, and then Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom. So we're really in the last cusp of it. That's why I call this thing the end of the DCU, because it is the 10-year anniversary. This is like the same weekend Man of Steel opened up like 10 years ago, and it seems to be going on in a bit of whimper. Now, I'm somebody who's enjoyed The Flash overall. I don't think it's one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. I think it's funny. Like I said, there's some emotional beats that kind of hit. Michael Keaton's pretty awesome in it. It has some really bad CGI, and I was giving it the benefit of the doubt of the screening I went to like a month ago. I was like, okay, it's kind of incomplete and finished, so I'll wait till the next month. No. It's they didn't really improve that in a lot of ways, but I think The Flash for the most part was an entertaining movie. It could have been better for sure, but that movie's like it's kind of like seeing it like a second time. You can kind of tell the studio has definitely had like the reboot, reshoots, and all that other stuff kind of going into it. The movie is just kind of a victim of a lot of issues. I mean, you had the Ezra Miller controversy. You had studio changes, the announcement of like this whole Dawn of DC or this new DC reboot and all that. And you kind of just have some lingering pieces just left over. And even having two Batmans in it wasn't enough to save this thing. Which, like I said, I was kind of surprised. I guess spoilers. Yeah, the reveal at the end, I did kind of get a laugh out of it with the reveal. I thought that was kind of a funny troll. So I kind of respect that. Yeah, Sony doing a better job than Marvel at Spider-Man. Yeah, I'm sorry you felt it's disappointing, Tevia. Like I said, I know a lot of people are kind of in the same boat in regards to the Flash. Like I said, I'm somebody who likes it overall. Like I said, I don't think it's the greatest thing of all time, and I can understand faults with it, especially with the VFX. I think if it had better VFX, people wouldn't be as cruel to it. But this is a movie where people, like a lot of people, really want it to fail. Um, yeah, I mean, I was somebody who thought the performance in the movie was like was pretty decent, like not half bad. I think I think like the heartfelt moments with Barry and his mom worked pretty well in conjunction with things. Um, but yeah, like I said, there's a purpose why the younger Barry is super annoying, so the older Barry has to kind of come to terms with that. With Flash, with Henry Cavill Superman, yeah, I think that one sounded pretty good too. Um, Yeah, I think Ezra gives a decent performance in the movie. Granted, you have all the controversy and craziness surrounding it, but yeah, like I said, like the Flash movie is it has so much going against it. Like you just can't win. You have the announcement of an inevitable reboot. You have Ezra Miller's shenanigans going on. You have the fan base who like doesn't want it to want to move on from Zack Snyder's vision. It's just so many things turning out. You have bad word of mouth with comic book films in a lot of ways in general, outside of other things. You see, it's supposed to be, but like there's a lot of things that feel a little bit different. You could argue it's a variant, but they say it's the same one because there's a lot of nods and Easter eggs, but you could argue it's a different variant of the 89 one. Yeah, but you know what? It is what it is. The Flash movie. Yeah, I mean the thing is like people are like complaining like why aren't you announcing your stuff, James Gunn? And then he announces like, oh, we're kind of rebooting things. Like it's like, well, what about this other stuff? So um yeah, it is. Yeah, like I said, the CGI. Yeah, I saw that excuse from Andy Muschietti, which I'm still looking forward to him directing Brave and the Bold because I like the Batman stuff a lot in this movie. But the stuff in the Speed Force just looked really like there's some bad CGI. It needed more time to polish up, or you could have just kind of omitted a few things. It wouldn't have been a big deal. Um, and like I said, that's really hurting the movie too. Like releasing it the way I am shocked they released it the way it was. But this movie's been like delayed, reshot, redone so many times with a lot of different things. It really is just kind of like a lot of studio meddling. You can tell. I mean, this director's vision is still kind of in there. Um, but yeah, I mean, like there's some crazy stuff. Okay, Tevia, the I guess spoilers for this point. The Nick Cage cameo I thought was pretty funny because if you know the history of Superman Lives, and just that whole fiasco. I thought it was kind of cool that they brought him in for that. Yeah, the VFX looked rather iffy, but if you know the history of Superman Lives, because we were supposed to get a Tim Burton Superman movie back in the 1990s, which would have starred Nicolas Cage, but it didn't quite like pan out the way it did. But I mean, Nick Cage finally got to play Superman in that regards. I guess they brought him in for a few things, but you know, it is what it is, but cool. We got to see Nick Cage Superman. I thought that was a nice little touch. The Christopher Reeve thing, I know, and the George Reeves thing, I get people have issues with that because they're actors who have passed away. You probably could have just used archival footage of them. I think that would have been fine. Maybe you could have brought in Grant Gustin for a cameo, which would have been better than like whatever random Flash the kind of, or like John Wesley Shipp, or you could have brought in Brandon Routh since I guess he's technically the Christopher Reeve Superman, but not really. There's a lot of things that you could have done with that to make it better, but it is what it is, I suppose. So, but yeah, so now that like we got the Flash out of the way, which is not doing so well financially, it's going to be another box office dub, which is what like 5 in a row for Warner Brothers. Because think about it, you had Birds of Prey underperformed. Aquaman did very well, and then you had Shazam, which the first Shazam was a box office success. It had a low budget, it was profitable. And then you have Birds of Prey, which I think maybe just barely broke even. Then you had the pandemic hit, which caused Wonder Woman 84 to lose money. And then you go from that. You had the Suicide Squad, which didn't do very well because, like I said, you're still like pandemic box office at the time. But it did well on streaming, I guess. And the Snyder Cut was streaming. And then after that, you had what was it? Peacemaker, which was a successful TV show. They're going to do another season. And then you had Black Adam come out after that. And then, Shazam 2. But in the meantime, you have Matt Reeves, who's kind of off doing his own thing. And in the Batman, which was a success. It was distinctly different and it was more grounded. It was more gritty. I like the Batman quite a bit. There's a few things that could have done better, but I think it is a solid Batman movie overall. So now we're kind of in this weird place right now. We're going to have like Elseworld stuff, and then we're going to have in-universe stuff. But like DC's also been like once James Gunn was brought in, they're really starting to kind of wipe things out a little bit. Like shows like Titans, Doom Patrol, and all that, and are really coming to an end. There are things that are distinctly Elseworlds as they call them, but yeah, I don't know. It is kind of what it is. Hang on. Yep, Nick Cage fighting Spider. Yeah, I don't know because like I don't know what they're gonna do with this new. I think the main reason for the Flash's ending was just to kind of put Ezra Miller out of the picture. Like that's kind of what they were doing with it because they're gonna rebooting some things, but they want Ezra somewhere else because given all the controversy, and it's like okay, this is where this Barry Allen's gonna stay. And what better way to torture somebody than to put them in the George Clooney universe? And it's true this movie's supposed to have an extended cut, then hell no, cut me out even more. Suicide Bomb. Yeah, like I said, it is what it is. They're trying to boost. Yeah, the HBO Max thing, like, and like theaters. Like the only movie I thought that did really well for them was Godzilla versus Kong. And that movie was pirated to shit. But like that was like the first movie to kind of open things up, and it did save movie theaters. So I think the new Empire is going to do quite well at the box office. But now we are where we're at with the DC Extended Universe. James Gunn announced his reboot. All sorts of craziness going on with that. He's going in his direction. Some things I think will be. I think Superman Legacy is going to be the real testing ground for DC because I think people are ready. This universe, it was an interesting experiment, but it's a fascinating look at like studio meddling, changes constantly, what works, what doesn't work, trying to do something and then not trying to do anything. When you should really just focus on just like telling a good story and no need to try and rush to keep up with the competition because that's what a lot of it was with some stuff. And then maybe playing the wait and see approach with some things, maybe doing too much at times is bad as well. There's just so much that you could have done better with the DC extended universe. I am glad that like we got it in some ways, but in other ways I'm kind of disappointed because we're kind of in a weird place now where it's like Batman and Superman like given the first chance. This is like we could have done so much better with it all. And the thing is like I wish things were better for DC. I wish they had the success some ways of Marvel, but in some ways their failures at times have led to some like movies that we might have never gotten had like there been some bombs along the way. Like we never would have gotten Joker if DC's universe was really like well liked and cohesive from the start. We never would have gotten Matt Reeves the Batman without the failings of things like Justice League. So in some ways, it's like their failures often lead to some rather interesting and unique successes. So it's kind of a weird place where it's like if they fail sometimes, then it leads to something really great. So it's like I want them to have really good cohesive universe, and I want to see the characters I love growing up and even reading stuff now be treated with respect and admiration and like reach the highs of like kind of where Marvel was at and a lot of their stuff before the MCU has dwindled a lot in quality with a few lingering things like Guardians 3 and Spider-Man No Way Home. I wanted good things to happen. Yeah, like I said, going back to Pokemon. Yeah, go have fun with Pokemon. Well, James Gunn did actually finish the script for Superman Legacy. Now they're just testing actors right now. So hopefully the writer's strike wraps up soon. And then like they can like move on to different things. Because like right now we also had the Penguin TV show, which is filming, but then they had to stop due to the writer's strike. Huh. Yeah, Nolan left Warner Brothers. The thing with Nolan is like he left Warner Brothers after the whole HBO Max and streaming thing because that cuts away a lot of actors' deals. But also like the studio, like the reason they're kind of in a bad spot in a lot of ways of releasing stuff was because of Nolan and Tenet. Like we were so adamant that I'm the first one to do this stuff, but people didn't go to the movies to see it that much. Yeah, like I said, so many factors. Yeah, JJ. Okay, I forgot about JJ Abrams. Like, Mike, let's talk about JJ Abrams for a second. Like, this guy is an absolute hack. Like, they got like a $500 million deal with Bad Robot. What has JJ Abrams produced for DC since he was given that deal? Absolutely nothing. He has produced nothing. He was the he pulled the ultimate con job for money. He has not produced anything since being under his contract. Maybe like a small TV show or something like that. But like, what movies has JJ directed? What movies has he written? What movies has he done? Nothing. They brought him in, which was a dumb idea because you look at how he kind of screwed up Star Wars. I say that as I have a Force Awakens poster right in the back. But keep in mind, like I'm thinking of taking this one down and switching it with something else. I got that for free a few years ago. But yeah, like why? Like why? Like why is JJ like given the keys to the kingdom for all this stuff and he's contributed absolutely nothing? So I don't think that JJ Abrams' Superman movie is going to happen. He just he's not the best. Like I said, he did well with Star Trek the first time, didn't do so great the second time. But like I said, he pulled off a miracle there. Like Force Awakens, I know some people like it, but I didn't care for it all that much. But like I said, JJ is kind of in a weird place. But yeah, JJ Abrams should not be allowed to touch things. So, but yeah, JJ Abrams hasn't done anything with DC. That's the thing, though. Like he has done absolutely nothing. Like nothing. Like what has he done? He's contributed nothing. I guess he's going to work on this Ta-Nehisi Coates Superman movie, which was a bad idea to begin with, especially if you know the history of Ta-Nehisi Coates. Especially like some of the stuff he said about like 9/11 first responders. The guy sounds like a douche. Like terrible choice for Superman. But you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing what James Gunn does. Yeah, exactly. Like what are we gonna do now? Like I don't know with DC anymore. It's kind of a weird place right now. It's like we're just kind of waiting for the storm to kind of ride out with these last two movies with Blue Beetle and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But like the brand is damaged, man. It is in a bad spot. I think after this year, they definitely need to take a little bit of a break. Next year, they'll just have Joker 2, which I think will be good. And then they can take like a year or so off after this and just kind of slowly build things up and really start things fresh with Superman Legacy. Like give the audience time to breathe, if you will. I think they've done too much things at once and just like just kind of throwing things together. Well, they had 4 movies this year. Like that's the most they've had, but it's still like not the greatest. Marvel's kind of the same way too. They really need to take their like just kind of throttle back on some stuff as well. But this is a DCEU video, so we're talking about it. Yeah, the movies have been a mess, and you know what? I understand. I like it sucks that like the DCU didn't live up to its full potential in a lot of ways, and in some ways, I'm bummed that like there isn't really like a fully great conclusion to it so far. I guess, but I understand why James Gunn is just kind of restarting things because like it's a Band-Aid that has to be ripped off at this point because it's like there really isn't much salvaging at this point. I mean, like other filmmakers have tried to do their own things. It needs a cohesive vision in a lot of ways to kind of like really mold a good story forward. And I hope Gunn is able to do that and bring in some really talented filmmakers. Like to tell an overall story, be director driven enough, make sure the scripts are in a good place before starting to film. That's always been an issue I feel with a lot of comic book movies. And I'm hoping that he's able to like steer the ship properly. I know we got him writing and directing Superman Legacy. I think that movie would actually be pretty good because I saw what he did with Guardians 3 and I really liked that one. And I liked his DC stuff actually more with the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. But yeah, like so many things to change. Who asked for a Joker sequel? Some people like apparently the $1 billion+ did, but like I said, I don't think we need a Joker sequel, but I am curious to see it. I guess they're just going to have like musical elements to it, which sounds absolutely insane. Technically, some of those movies were delayed. Yeah, that's true. A lot of stuff was delayed. That's true, Tevya. We should have. But again, they try to start like because like think about it, beforehand, they tried to start a universe with Green Lantern. That didn't go well, and then we had this one and that one. It's a shame. You know, as Mr. Freeze. You talking to me, Batman? Yeah, I'm thinking back to Arnold's Mr. Freeze. Stumble to fall. That speech fits the DCU big time. It fell hard. But then again, in time, they will join you in the sun. So that in time, you will help them accomplish wonders. So I'm hoping that one rings true for the new DCU. Because there's a lot of stuff I'm looking forward to. Like, finally, we can hopefully get some Bat Family stuff. Well, like the proper Bat Family in a movie. Because we've not had Batman and Robin on screen in a movie together since Batman and Robin. I'm not counting John Blake in The Dark Knight Rises where his name's Robin. I'm talking like genuine, like the Bat Family has not been utilized at all in any Batman movies. post Batman and Robin. I think it's absolutely, and they weren't even done properly. Like Barbara Wilson, like it should be Barbara Gordon. I want things to be done properly, and I'm hoping that's what happens with this next phase of DC. I think, like I said, Superman Legacy, it's a band-aid that needed to be like DC needs to kind of refresh things and kind of clean up their act a little bit with some stuff. But I'm hoping for good things because I think we've had like kind of a rough go of things as DC fans. But the DC Extended Universe as a whole, there's memories it gave me that I liked. I'm glad it exists to an extent to where we got a lot of stuff. But then at the same time, it kind of like saddens me. It's like, this is like the best we got with a lot of things. Like it didn't quite work for me. Like, and I think it didn't work for a lot of people to the best of its abilities. There was potential there, but it didn't quite live up to it. So I am looking forward to seeing like kind of a fresh start at this point because I think DC kind of needs it. It just kind of sucks we didn't really have like a grand epic conclusion, if you will, to the DCEU. I get it. Blue Beetle's out. I think that's going to that one's kind of standalone. You can probably just shove that into James Gunn's New Vision if you want. And then Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom. That's kind of like the last lingering thing of really everything. And then really it's fully new DCU from there. But anyways, I think I have rambled on long enough. My voice is just hurting really badly right now. I've talked for an hour and 50 minutes straight through. But we'll see what happens. I don't think John's going to show up, Tevye. And the reason I'm saying this is because we're getting Superman Legacy. So we got to like, there's unless Superman's already a dad, then I don't see it happening. I think if you want Superman as a dad, you're just going to have to stick with Superman and Lois. Yeah, Dark. Rest in peace, Dark Universe. That's right. That's the most mishandled universe of all time. Like they had so much ego in that. I'm sure. Yep. You know, my favorite shared universe is still the Monsterverse right now because with the Monsterverse, they take their time with it. They don't oversaturate the market. Granted, we do have a TV show coming out this upcoming week, which I am looking forward to watching. And then we have another series, Monarch Legacy Monsters, and then the next movie. They take their time with their movies. If things don't work, they kind of do the wait and see approach. Okay, we'll wait and see what happens next, and then we'll go from there. That's kind of what they do. But so far, that's just unlike like DC or Marvel, where they're really kind of rushing things out. That one at least takes their time. They're more filmmaker driven movies in a lot of ways. GBK definitely had studio and kind of changes going on after the reception of the previous film, but they kind of worked to rectify things, and I think they overall pleased the audience. But yeah, it does take its time, which is what I like about it. Superman was supposed to be in his late 20s or 30s. Yeah, that's true, because DC Rebirth really started to take place during the marketing of Batman vs. Superman. So, but anyways, I think I have rambled on long enough. I hope everyone kind of enjoyed this stream. I've been talking for quite a long time now. My voice is really starting to go. I need a glass of water, and I need some food, because I haven't really eaten like anything today. So I think I'm going to wrap this stream up. It was good to stream again. It's been such a long time. Sorry I didn't bring anyone on, because I just kind of wanted to ramble and kind of get the stream out there going again, because it's been quite a long time. Didn't really have a big engaged discussion, but I think I had fun with this. Maybe like at some point I'll do another stream again. I can bring somebody else in and kind of have some fun with it. But I mean, this is a fun thing to kind of talk about. The DCU was a fascinating experiment. It's like, it gave us some memories. Like I am glad that I was there from like beginning to basically the end of it. It kind of sucks it's going on a bit of a whimper rather than like a full high note, and it doesn't quite live up to the expectation. It kind of sucks that the brand has kind of been damaged like the way it was. But you know what? Like I said, I'll think back to the positive memories and the bits I had, the friends I made in some ways, like because of some of these movies. But like I said, I'll still leave kind of like underwhelmed in the sense that it didn't quite nail it like it should have. Yep, gonna be fun. But yeah, it's great seeing you all again too. Godzilla 93, Tevye, everyone. This was fun. Yeah, I appreciate everybody for jumping onto the stream. If you have any comments or like any thoughts overall on the DC Extended Universe and it coming to an end, let me know in the comments section down below. How would you rank the movies and TV series and all that? I think I put a ranking on Twitter. Some people agree with it. Some people were kind of real dicks about it too after I posted it. But like I said, that's what happens when you're dealing with this fandom. I think, like I said, we need a fresh start. We need to like out with the old, in with the new at this point. Yeah, it sucks that a lot of promises we never got to like a follow up on a lot of stuff, but I think we need to clean house again for DC, start fresh, work from the ground up, really build the audience trust back again. Stop with this whole like meeting deadlines thing, like as you say right here. I think too, because like with what James Gunn, I think what they said was like they're not going to start filming until the scripts are done, which is a great thing to hear. Now that DC Studios is kind of its own thing, it's kind of separate now. That'll be like interesting to see where it goes from here. But, anyways, I've rambled on long enough. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Really appreciate it. If you're new here, comment, like, subscribe. But you're all not necessarily new here. Felt good to do a live stream again. I really appreciate everybody for watching the channel and all that. It means a lot to me. And I'm excited to see what DC does next with their stuff. So looking forward to the reboot. It's time. When you got to rip the Band-Aid off, start fresh and new, move on, let the baggage get pushed behind. I know some people won't like the fact that it's coming to an end. But I think a lot of people just kind of want a fresh start. And, you know, like I said, we'll need a little bit of a break from the stuff, and then we can move into a fresh new direction. And I think that'll be good overall for everyone. So anyways, that's it. As always, take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.